Welcome everyone to Agile Talks by Agile Gurus. I'm your host Rahul Kataria, and today we have Daniel from London. Hey Daniel.
Hello, everyone. Hi, welcome from London. It's good to be back. I think we kind of took a 1 week break because of everything that was going on.
So today, this is a part 3 of our three-part series about Safe 5.0 digital transformation.
Yes.
And today our topic is we're going to talk about solution safe and how is it different from other safe like portfolio or large solution.
Yeah.
And we are also going to talk about measure and grow. I know that that's a lot of people in leadership level look into that. So I guess we're going to chat about that a little bit today. We have some questions that people sent our way. I'm going to go through the list. All right. Our first question. How will you describe large solution safe, and what's the difference between large solution and full safe configuration?
Full safe configuration is when you have basically all the configurations, that an enterprise or an organization is doing. And that would include essential safe, portfolio safe, and large solution safe, which means you have the three different layers, that you can easily abstract. Remember, essential safe is at the core program and the team level. Portfolio safe is basically what you actually use to drive value streams and, agile release trains. And then large solution safe is basically when you're looking at, having multiple dependencies, especially with, suppliers and then third-party agencies, where you'd have to actually coordinate multiple trains and multiple suppliers all in the same cadence and synchronization, and think about it as in when you're building, continuous evolving, systems. One of the fundamental things to understand is a lot of companies still have to have an element of portfolio safe to still do large solution safe. And organizations tend to actually do large solution safe from a competency and capability perspective, where you've got capabilities and enablers that allow you to coordinate and align with multiple suppliers and multiple trains. You can actually have more than one ARCs or agile release train. Whereas in full safe, you're actually working at the portfolio level in full, implementation, as well as working with the essential safe layer, but you're also bringing in the large solution layer because of the dependencies between capabilities. So what you would normally have is a roll-up of your epics going into capabilities and enablers, and you have your epic enablers, and then they go into features and then feature enablers, and then you also have stories and story enablers. Whereas in large solution safe, you might just have one epic, but it actually spans across multiple solutions. And it's all about, how we apply lean, system engineering to build really big complex systems. How do we also coordinate and align? Bearing in mind that one of the key things that you need to consider when doing large solution safe is the fact that different suppliers and different agencies might be working in different models. And by models, I mean, if you have a supplier, for instance, in a car manufacturing industry, where you've got people producing different components, different vehicle parts, different specifications, different engine, dimensions, and then also you're looking at an assembly plant, you would actually have the different suppliers giving you different timelines as to when those parts actually hit your warehouse and before they actually start being assembled. However, you still also have the core teams that are looking to build the innovation and the digital electric systems behind how those cars perform and work. So it's how do you actually continually evolve those, lifelong systems. There's likely going to be a supplier for sensors because your GPS and your, car maps would need that data coming from somewhere. But you also have another supplier likely producing and supplying you things like upholstery, gear size, engine size, composition of the vehicles, the color specifications, the swaps, and all of that. You'd also have another company looking at actually producing your service manual, so your brochures and all this kind of, data and all those artifacts come. Now, each of them would have different timelines. So how do you coordinate all of those in a aligned synchronization and cadence, whereby you actually are looking to continually provide value to your customers while tracking exactly what the dependencies are from the different trains? And then you also have customer onboarding. And when you have a car, manufacturer, for instance, you would have your dealers, you would have your service suppliers, you'd have your insurance companies, you'd have all these different elements that all contribute to the larger solution. So how do you drive that? And that's where large enterprise solution SAFE comes in, because it's enterprise solution delivery.
So we talked about enterprise solution, right? What
Yeah.
are the key things to know about enterprise solution delivery?
Key things to know about enterprise solution delivery is there's a need to understand fixed and variable costing, the dependency also between capabilities and enablers as they help extend the architectural runway. So when you're looking at your capabilities, you're actually looking at, okay, well, what is it we're looking at from an initiative, which may be actually your epics, and the themes that actually drive those epics. However, that is at the portfolio level. So you still have lean portfolio governance and lean portfolio management. But at the program level, what are we doing? We're actually taking those capabilities and then making them and translating them into features that actually can be delivered within a PI. So in large solutions SAFE, you have capabilities which also are meant to be delivered within a PI, and also features that are meant to be delivered within a PI. And the epics, are actually all the capabilities and the epics all roll back towards the portfolio themes, the initiatives that the organization is doing. And the stories all map back, to either the features or the epics.
Gotcha.
So other key difference you begin to look at is you may have multiple RTEs working together with a single solution train engineer. And you'd also have likely an enterprise solution architect, working in coordinating what that solution architecture looks like. So the events also tend to happen, almost in sync with what you were doing, essential SAFE. However, there's a dependency whereby in solution SAFE, your large enterprise solution SAFE, you tend to have the role of an STE, which is a solution train engineer, coordinating all these multiple trains, but working with all the RTEs, the Scrum Masters, the product management. Whereas in Essential SAFE, you now have the highest role there in coordination and coaching would be the RTE, and then at the team level, you have the Scrum Masters.
Got you. Interesting. I don't know if anyone listening to this right now, our live audience, if you have implemented or you are part of a full SAFE configuration. I would love to know more about that if you can in the chat. That'd be cool. So Daniel, next question, and this is, I guess we are combining it. We were going to talk about measure, grow anyway, right?
Yes.
One of the questions we got was, all right, so organization agility, business agility, and measure and grow. How do these all relate to each other, and why are they important for assessing SAFE in their digital business transformation?
So measure and grow, actually, it was added as an add-on in the new SAFE 5.0 framework. We always used to have metrics in the 4.6 framework of SAFE. In 5.0, measure and grow actually now abstracts the different metrics at the different configurations and layers, and also looks at assessing metrics from either portfolio configuration and then the competencies and the dimensions at that layer, and then you could also look at the metrics that have to do with essential SAFE, So if you think about essential SAFE, where we spoke about team and technical agility, what are the metrics you use to measure that? How do you actually evaluate, progress within an organization? What does business agility look like, So within measure and grow, you're looking at, the overall growth of your enterprise transformation and of your SAFE implementation. You're looking at, assessing exactly, are we doing the right things from an agile product delivery? Are we doing the right things from a team and technical agility perspective? Are we also, measuring the right outcomes, in terms of lean agile leadership? Are we looking to see whether we're imbibing a new culture of continuous learning, where everyone in the organization learns and grows together? Are we looking at certain aspects of, making sure that in terms of agility, it's now an organizational aspect, not just a development aspect or technological, initiative, or what are the incentives, also how are you looking at, becoming a lean business when you talk about outcomes, so you start thinking about lean thinking people, understanding what the metrics are. So within SAFe itself, there are several metrics that you can use at each level. What we always advise is measure and grow to see exactly. And one of the key things that we always recommend and guide people by is you start with essential SAFe. Are you doing essential SAFe well? Are you doing it properly? Why are you doing essential SAFe? And why do you even want to do solution SAFe? Why do you also want to do portfolio SAFe? What are the different layers and what are the competencies to look out for? Remember, if you think about SAFe in the full framework, we will have configurations, competencies, and the dimensions within each competency. So how do we measure and assess, the maturity, the agility, and the overall outcomes that we're looking to produce in terms of customer delivery, customer centricity, design thinking, developing on cadence, release on demand, and then DevOps practices. And also, how do we as a team of teams continue to work with built-in quality? So remember, you also have your QMS, so what does those compliance metrics look like, So there's a lot in business agility, and measure and grow is a large topic on its own. Oftentimes you would always see teams having a resistance or hesitation towards wanting to adopt metrics because they don't have a clear understanding as to why you're measuring and growing. And some people are also very bad in the sense that there's been a blame culture where if we measure and grow and we're not improving, it now tends to become a report card for a blame culture. So what you want to do is avoid that. And that's why SAFe always says, ensure you have an SBC or a coach who has an understanding of what those metrics are to help guide the organization into what it is you're measuring, how you're measuring, and what the outcomes are of those measurements. So what is the impact? You've got OKRs from a theme capability point of view, and from a large enterprise solution level. You also would have KPIs. You would always have things that you're looking at in terms of lean budget, agile portfolio, lean governance. How are we doing all of that? Then at the team level, even just the basic things, are we really doing our daily stand-ups correctly? Is there a culture right now where we have the team norms? Are we doing role-based SAFe where we now have people who understand exactly what the roles and responsibilities are of the Scrum Master, the product owner, and then the Agile team? Are we now seeing a dependency and coordination and collaboration and alignment between the different teams on a train and then the different trains on a large solution train?
That's right. Yeah. So talking about the measure and grow part specifically, right? What are, and maybe, we can talk about either, like, what are some anti-patterns, I guess, if you have seen, or what are some key things to keep in mind when you're looking into that?
So key things to keep in mind is, I even without using SAFe in terms of measure and grow, but just basic Scrum and Agile, and Kanban. A lot of people pretend to be doing Kanban because they have a Kanban board, but they're not really doing Kanban.
Right.
That's a classic example. We've got a visual radiator that actually tells us exactly that this is what we're delivering. But you also have organizations who've got, they're agile agnostic, or what you call, multiple frameworks working in the same organization, not really implementing SAFe. They've got also dependencies from waterfall models whereby they're actually waiting for designs to come up front. And that can be understandable because maybe they have to go through phase gates regulation and all of those things. So where are we looking to measure? What is it we're measuring, and why are we measuring these things? We're trying to measure from either a portfolio capability point of view and understanding exactly from the funding, but fundamentally at a team level, what are the Scrum Masters measuring? I always ask people, how do you measure trust? You can't really, right. It's just got to be earned, so there's certain things that have got to be earned, and also it's the same thing with lean leadership. How do you measure leadership? Leadership would actually have to come with you understanding exactly that the leaders, buy into the transformation and the agility and the, overall implementation of your framework to embrace new cultures, new mindset, new ways of working. And then you can now start assessing, are we actually crawling in this phase? Are we running? Are we walking? What is it we're really doing? So some of the key anti-patterns you would see, for instance, I'll give you a classic example. When you have dev managers and people who are not doing the work being part of a retrospective and wanting to contribute, that is an anti-pattern.
Got you.
Your retrospective should actually be for the core team, It's the people doing the work with the scrum master and the product owner. It's different from an iteration review where you have the stakeholders come in to give feedback. So how do you actually work together to actually make sure that the teams understand? And then also, when you actually have scrum masters likely maybe wearing two hats, there's a scrum master doing half of the work of the dev work. Is he now assessing, what the teams are doing from a dev perspective or from a scrum perspective? Because there's a conflict of interest there. So those are anti-patterns you could already see. Are we also being able to show and tell, to do a demo every 2 weeks? If we can do a demo at the end of every sprint or iteration, then really are we actually growing? If there are dependencies that we are not actually looking to resolve, and there's always the excuse, oh, the organization is this way, we don't know how to do it. But then are you capturing those bottlenecks and those constraints to see exactly how you can solve them, and measuring whether or not you're solving them and overcoming those bottlenecks or those challenges in the organization?
That's right. A key thing that you just mentioned, and I want to actually mention it again for all our listeners. When you're doing measure and grow, anytime you're measuring, either at the team level or train level, just ask that question: why are we doing it? Like, why is it important to even measure? Not just like measuring just for the sake of it. Because I have seen scrum masters going in, rushing to the team and saying, we need to have 20 stories groomed by next sprint for whatever reason, because our manager said so. And that might not be a good measure of anything. So a lot of times teams don't trust the process because they don't know why are we measuring this way or that way.
Yeah, and that's a very classic example, Rahul. One of the things you'd also notice is when people bring in features that don't actually have any business value, but just because someone has said we need to do it. Are we looking at the outcomes? Are we validating and verifying? There's a hypothesis, there's a benefit hypothesis to why we do things. So can we justify the reason why our backlog has 700 items and then you're now trying to prioritize 100 of them in a PI? Really? And then also you're now trying to have too much information when you're going into a PI. The PI is meant to be the event where everybody comes in. Somebody has asked a question around also, whether, you add monetary value to epics. If we think about epics being what drives the portfolio and the agile release train, then okay, are we measuring the value we've gotten from that epic? Is
That's
there
right.
a return on investment? Was it time criticality? Was there cost benefit? Was there risk reduction enabled? How are we looking to test all of these things? And how do we verify and validate and then see exactly whether we're building the right things and we're building the thing right? So that's where quality also comes in. And how do we in the end continue to see exactly?
Yeah. So, and talking about that point, the monetary value, I have actually heard a lot of, RT product owner,
Yeah.
leadership position talking about putting monetary value at objectives or epics. And, I don't know how helpful it is, or is it just like a random number they throw in at, saying this epic is worth, $20,000, whatever. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of that for sure.
That's another cost for itself when we go into lean agile and what you call lean budgeting and then understanding agile contracts. One of the key things you want to do is in SAFe, remember your epics are always guided by the capacity on the train, and then you move the money to where the train is. So what you want to do is, if for instance I've got a train that actually has 100 people and there's a cost estimate, because you also got to measure capex, capital expenditure, operating expenditure. How much are we spending on this agile release train? And there's going to be things around, resourcing, tooling, infrastructure, the efforts required, also the complexity, the timeline, and all of those things. So now we're even just being practical. How do we measure those things? So what we want to do is, a lot of organizations are still working in a fixed, time and material process, or, fixed price budgets, and trying to do agile and retrofit agile with it. Whereas the reality is that, you should shift the direction and the mindsets to understanding, okay, we've got a team of 100 people. These are the epics they're going to are the outcomes? What's the business value internally, externally, and also what is driving the reason why we're doing this epic?
Right.
Then can we measure that also to capacity? Because remember, you're going to be estimating at the story level, but you're also going to be looking at loading your capacity and your velocity, to understand exactly whether you've got the bandwidth. And then you continue to improve. And that's where you go into things like, normalizing your story points, relative estimation, relative sizing, comparing between historical estimation versus current estimation, also understanding exactly what your cumulative flow looks like in terms of throughput, in terms of lead time and process time, and then also what are the waiting times, where they phase gates such as handoffs between when the core team had delivered and they were ready to push things into production, but because there were security checks or compliance, we couldn't do it. That's a constraint. How do we in the end remove that bottleneck? Where do we in the end resolve those?
Yeah. No, thank you, Daniel, for that. I guess that brings us to the end of our conversation today, guys. Daniel, any closing remarks? I know we have to have a hard stop at 6:55.
I am so excited, and I hope that this 3-part series we've done has just given you guys a bit of a background. We're still going to be doing so much more, and I just want to say, let's just keep this going. There are a lot of questions where people are not sure how to implement. I had a bit of feedback as to understanding the different frameworks, and I also did a survey on LinkedIn, which actually showed that a lot of people are still doing SAFe 4.5 and haven't even moved to SAFe 4.6, and some are just doing SAFe 5.0. So there's that confusion within all organizations as to what really within the SAFe framework are we doing. So I think this webinars and this podcast we're doing is really helping people out there, and I'll always continue to say keep your questions coming, and we will continue working with you all.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Daniel. Yeah, guys. So if you have more questions related to this or any other topic, feel free to send it to us at rk@myagilegurus.com. And then we'll keep continuing doing these podcasts. We are planning to do another session with all our coaches and trainers. It's more like a Q&A panel session. So where we'll have all our coaches here, and you guys feel free to come join us. And if you have any questions, you can ask our coaches. So we'll probably try to do that for an hour. But if you want to join that, do feel free to contact me again at rk@myagilegurus.com. All right. With that being said, I will see you guys next week. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Daniel.
Yes, thank you. All right. Cheers. Bye then. Bye, everyone.